Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and celebrated Christmas with all of your loved ones. I know I did. Now we're back and getting ready for the new year and what's ahead. And as I was reading through the news, really last week, I ran across this article. So I wanted to start off after Christmas videos talking about this because I read this and I thought, do people really believe this? And what I'm talking about is this from Pew Research Center. It says about 4 in 10 U.S. adults believe humanity is living in the end times. It says periods of catastrophe and anxiety, such as the pandemic, have historically led some people to anticipate that the destruction of the world as we know it, the end times, is near. This thinking often has a religious component that draws on sacred scripture. In Christianity, for example, these beliefs include expectations that Jesus will return to earth after or amid a time of great turmoil. In the United States, 39% of adults say they believe we are living in the end times, while 58% say they do not believe we are living in the end times, according to a recent Pew Research Center survey. Christians are divided on the question, with 47% saying we are living in the end times. So only 47% of Christians believe we're living in the end times. And yeah, we could debate, what do you mean by end times? But there's a few other points in here that I want to talk about. So this one here, they say views about Jesus's return to earth. The survey also explored Americans' views about a core tenet of Christianity, the belief that Jesus will eventually return to earth in what is often called the second coming. When asked if Jesus will return to earth someday, more than half of all U.S. adults, 55%, say this will happen. That's a very important number. I want to come back and look at that again once we read through some more of this, because I want to talk first about this near concluding paragraph where they say, evangelicals are divided on questions about the circumstances of Jesus' return, with 44% taking a premillennial stance and 45% saying that it is impossible to know the circumstances that will precede Jesus' return. So 45% of self-identified evangelicals, almost half, say it's impossible to know the circumstances that will precede Jesus' return. I read that and think, how could they hold that belief? Because Jesus himself tells us you can. Are they reading the Bible at all? So let's go to Matthew chapter 24. And when we get to verse 3, it says, later Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives. His disciples came to him privately and said, tell us, when will all this happen? What sign will signal your return and the end of the world? So the very thing that Pew Research Center is talking about here. And does Jesus say, let's see what they say. Stop there. It's impossible to know the circumstances of my return. No, he didn't say that at all. Otherwise, this whole chapter would have ended right there at verse 4 with him saying, wait, don't go there. It's impossible to know anything about the circumstances of my return. No, instead, he goes on and lists a whole bunch of things to look for. And the prophets also had things that they said to look for. So we can take those into account as well. But just based on Matthew 24 alone, Jesus gives us this whole list of things to look for. He doesn't say, no, stop, don't even bother. There's no way. It's impossible for you to know the circumstances of my return. So what that tells me in this Pew Research Center poll, if it's to be believed, is that 45% of self-proclaimed evangelicals don't read their Bible. I don't know any other way to put it other than that. And especially when you get down here and you read it starting at verse 32, he says, "Now learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its branches bud and its leaves begin to sprout, you know summer is near. In the same way, when you see all these things, you can know his return is very near, right at the door. I tell you the truth, this generation will not pass from the scene until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will disappear, but my words will never disappear. So here Jesus is saying, when you see all these things, now, certainly you can debate whether we see all those things today, whether our generation sees the convergence of those signs or not. Fine. But what this poll is saying is that, what was it, 45% say it's impossible to know the circumstances of his return. Yet Jesus is saying, when you see all these things, you can know I'm right at the door. So he's not saying it's impossible. He's saying there will come a time, whether you believe that's now or well into the future at some other point in time, there will come a time when you will be able to see these things happen, and you'll know my return is right at the door. So I don't understand how people can miss that, but unless they're just not reading their Bibles. I'm going somewhere with this, so let's go back up and look at this original article again from Pew Research Center. It says, when asked if Jesus will return to Earth someday, more than half of all U.S. adults, 55%, say they believe it will happen. I find that hard to believe that, if this poll is accurate, it doesn't make sense with people's actions. If 55% of the people in the United States really believed Jesus is coming back, would they be living their lives the way we see them living their lives today? Would society in the United States of America look the way it does today? I don't think so. I find that hard to believe. And if we look back at the beginning of the year, Pew Research had done another poll. And this one said, about 3 in 10 U.S. adults are now religiously unaffiliated. Self-identified Christians make up 63% of the U.S. population. And if we scroll down in that article, we see this figure that 24% claim that they are born-again Christians. 24%. Now, I want you to think about that number and think about 55% of U.S. adults believe Jesus is coming back one day. Yet only 24% of U.S. adults are born-again Christians. So more than half of those who believe Jesus is coming back have rejected the gospel. That's what that tells me. Because if we go to the book of John, chapter 3, verse 3, Jesus says, I tell you the truth, unless you were born again, you cannot see the kingdom of God. So if these numbers are to be believed, that only 24% of U.S. adults are born again, and 55% believe Jesus is coming back, that tells me we have a lot of work to do in spreading the gospel. I mean, we already knew we had a lot of work to do in spreading the gospel, but what that tells me is we have a lot of people open to the idea of Jesus and the gospel, but they have not yet received it. And you look at this and think, how can I can a bit understand how people who reject the Bible as myth would then not be born again, but how can people who believe that Jesus is coming back, if they really believe that, then reject the very gospel that can save them? This has been a question I've had all of my life, which is how so many people can go through life looking around them, seeing how people that came before them, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, sometimes people that were born after them, pass away, they die, and yet they know in their mind, well, aside from the rapture, it's very likely I'm going to die. Yet people know that, just as these people know Jesus is coming back, but they don't do anything about it. People will spend weeks and weeks planning vacations, weddings, retirements, career paths, all sorts of things, and they spend little time, if any at all, thinking about what happens when I die. What happens after this life? I look around and I see all these people that have come before me that are gone now. Where did they go? It's very logical to think, well, I'm going to one day go just as they did. Where will I be going? Maybe I should plan for that. Maybe I should think about that. Yet so many people think that's way off in the future, or they think, I don't want to have to think about that. So they bury their head in the sand. And I think that's where we're getting this idea that people believe Jesus is coming back, but then they're saying they reject the very gospel that can save them from what is to come. So guys, we need to get out there whatever time we have left. I don't know how much time we have left before the rapture. None of us know how much time we have left. We could die before the rapture. But we need to spend that time telling other people the good news of Jesus Christ, because there's so many people who are open to the gospel that are not being reached, as we see here. How can anybody really believe Jesus is coming back, but then they aren't a born-again Christian? They aren't living their lives as if Jesus is coming back. Because when you really believe Jesus is coming back, you live your life a lot differently than the world lives its life. So, what are your thoughts? What are your comments on this? Do you believe really that these figures are accurate, that they're true? Because that's telling me that more than half of the people that believe Jesus is coming back don't identify as born-again Christians. And Jesus says, unless you are born again, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. So again, we can debate whether or not we live in the season of the Lord's return, whether we're seeing the signs converge that Jesus spoke about in Matthew 24. I believe we are. But even if you don't believe that, and you believe Jesus is coming back sometime in the future, to say, well, we can't know anything about that, it's impossible to know the circumstances of his return, or to say, yes, I believe he's coming back, but no, I'm not living my life as if he is. No, I'm rejecting the very gift of salvation that could save me. Guys, we need to be out there sharing the gospel with as many people as possible, because we do live in the season of the Lord's return. Jesus is coming back. He said, when you see all these things happen, know I'm very near. My coming is right at the door. So we know we live in that time, and we need to be out there sharing the gospel with as many people as possible. So again, leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. I find these figures hard to, put together. I really struggle to figure out how people can hold one belief but not another. I really struggle to figure how people can reject all of this. But what do you think? Leave your comments below. Make sure to like and share this, and God willing, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Brit Gillette on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.